Today, Donbass is the scene of the most devastating, yet silent siege in human history. But this isn't a battlefield with guns and shells, it's something far worse. A critical drought, slowly suffocating millions, has become a man-made catastrophe. And the culprits? The very leaders who promised prosperity, yet have turned this once thriving region into an arid wasteland. Imagine a 53,000 square kilometer area, once Europe's industrial powerhouse, now transformed into a desert resembling North Africa. The rivers have dried, the reservoirs are empty, and the air is thick with dust contaminated by radioactive particles and toxic wastes. Once generating $220 billion annually, the region's wealth is vanishing as reservoirs evaporate, leaving behind cracked, barren earth. This massive disaster isn't natural, it's orchestrated by strategic neglect and reckless decisions from Moscow. Now, envision the suffering of those caught in this nightmare, millions deprived of water and basic hygiene. The shortages are so severe that water from taps flows only for a few hours weekly, often muddy or yellow, with a pungent smell of chemicals and heavy metals. People are forced to buy bottled water on the black market, if they can afford it, while hospitals run out of sterilization supplies, becoming epicenters of disease. Shockingly, this crisis is hitting Moscow's own soldiers and officials hardest. Russian garrisons and frontline troops, expecting to be protected by their own infrastructure, find themselves battling boils, lice, and outbreaks of deadly infections. They drink radiator water, if they're lucky, and fight to survive in conditions that seem medieval. How can a so-called superpower fail so badly? Why is the Kremlin neglecting its own people? The government's response is almost comical, if the situation weren't so tragic. Officials promote false modernization projects, show reconstructed pipelines, and boast about infrastructure repairs that don't exist. Meanwhile, field reports and independent investigations reveal that the 133-kilometer canal system, once the region's lifeline, has been destroyed by Russian fire and incompetence. It once supplied 94% of the region's water needs. Today, it's merely a pile of broken concrete. In the chaos, the authorities have resorted to dangerous solutions. Instead of fixing the water system, they encourage citizens to drink mineral water riddled with industrial pollutants, sulfates, petrol byproducts, dangerous chemicals, turning their own population into unwitting guinea pigs in a toxic experiment. The corruption is staggering, billions of rubles diverted into offshore accounts, with officials like Deputy Defense Minister Timur Ivanov arrested on charges of embezzlement. The evidence is horrifying, tortured bodies of contractors and corpses bearing signs of abuse. Could the water crisis be more than neglect? Could it be a cover-up for something darker? Meanwhile, a puppet leader appointed by Moscow pretends everything is under control, while secretly selling water tanks for exorbitant prices. The illusion of control masks a fundamental collapse. The failed pipeline from the Don River, once hailed as a strategic victory, is barely functioning, pumping even less than planned. Engineers report that the pipes are of terrible quality, pumps are underpowered, and the water volume doesn't meet the needs of millions, nor the occupying forces. The consequences are horrific. In Donetsk, residents are forced to resort to medieval tactics, filling plastic bags with waste and tossing them from windows, in a city that once epitomized modernity. The streets echo with the sounds of desperation, children coughing, the smell of decay filling every alley. The true horror? The very soldiers who claim to be defending Russia are succumbing to thirst, disease, and sickness that the Kremlin refuses to acknowledge. To make matters worse, Moscow's war tactics against Ukraine, like blowing up dams and disrupting hydro systems, have backfired spectacularly. The deliberate destruction of critical infrastructure aimed at crippling Ukraine's water supply has only worsened the crisis in Donbass. The land they scorched with fire and sabotage now bleeds toxins and despair, leaving Russian forces to suffer in the poisoned aftermath. Their scorched earth strategy has turned against them, leaving soldiers dying of dehydration on land they tried to burn to the ground. This isn't just a biological threat, it's psychological warfare. Fear and anger simmer beneath the surface. Inside the occupied territories, whispers of rebellion grow louder. Authorities crack down, raiding homes, confiscating makeshift rainwater collectors, and criminalizing survival solutions. They turn citizens into enemies for trying to quench their thirst, while water becomes a weapon of coercion. Now, the people's patience is cracking. Social media is flooded with desperate cries, stories of muddied, foul water, of disease spreading unchecked, and of communities falling ill. The silence of the authorities only fuels suspicion. What secrets are they hiding? Why is the water so contaminated? Is this part of a larger plan to break the spirit of the occupied? The answer might be more horrifying than anyone expected. In the end, what was once a land of industry, innovation, and hope has become a battleground of poison, neglect, and oppression. The true death toll isn't counted in casualties alone, it's measured in lives lost to dehydration, despair, and decay. While the world turns a blind eye, the people of Donbass fight not only for survival but for their very future, caught in a war they can neither see nor hear. Picture this: Moscow's deliberate neglect and blind strategies spin a dream of glory. Propaganda dazzles with rebuilt pipes and flashy upgrades on screen. Yet, raw data and frontlines expose a rotting mess beneath that shining mask. Did you know Donbass's water lifeline, a 133-kilometer canal hauling water from the Seversky Donets River, lies in ruins, like a shattered backbone? This artery, once supplying 94% of the region's needs, now resembles a forgotten heap of concrete, strangled by its own sands. The Russian army stormed it in early 2022, claiming it as a rescue mission. But their gunfire and clumsy grip turned it into debris, sealing the fate of millions. Now, in the sweltering summer of 2025, chaos reigns in occupied Donetsk and Luhansk. Imagine the heat like a furnace baking the skin, sweat dripping like silent tears under a merciless sun. Hundreds of thousands of Russians, dragged from far-off regions, join locals in this nightmare. Water? No longer a human right, it's a black market gamble, traded in shadows. City pipes lie lifeless, once vibrant veins now clogged and still. When water trickles, it's no blessing. Reports paint it as a filthy brew, muddy brown, reeking of decay, slimy to the touch, laced with heavy metals that sting the throat. Shockingly, this poison targets Russia's own, biting hardest at military bases in Donetsk, frontline troops, and Moscow bureaucrats lured with false promises. Whispers from the trenches reveal soldiers plagued by lice, scratching raw skin amid spreading plagues. Parched, they stoop to gulp radiator fluid from their vehicles. A desperate sip burning like acid. How can a so-called superpower army starve its fighters of clean water on occupied soil? This isn't a war blunder, it's a colossal logistical shame, humiliating the mighty Russian machine. Moscow's fix? A darkly ironic campaign urging folks to swap tap for mineral water. Experts scream warnings: Donbass's waters teem with salt overload, sulfates, oil sludge, and chemical killers. Russians are gulping a deadly potion disguised as refreshment, a twisted experiment on their people. Is this care, or calculated cruelty? Fury builds as visuals flood minds, soldiers coughing up dust, bureaucrats choking on lies, all trapped in this thirsty hell. A cruel twist: the empire's own drought outpaces any battlefield doom. Control 278, the Kremlin's propaganda spins tales of glory, masking neglect and poor planning. Screens flaunt rebuilt pipes and shiny projects. But ground reports and data expose a decaying truth. Brace for a shocking revelation: Donbass's water lifeline, a 133-kilometer canal drawing from the Seversky Donets River, stands in ruins, a crumbling skeleton of what it once was. This vital artery, supplying 94% of the region's water, now rots as useless concrete debris. Russian forces grabbed it at 2022's invasion start, pledging salvation. Yet, their bombs and reckless handling shattered it utterly. In 2025's relentless heat, occupied Donetsk and Luhansk boil in turmoil. Feel the sun's scalding glare, air thick with dust, temperature soaring like wildfire. Hundreds of thousands of Russians, shipped from homeland depths, endure this ordeal with locals. Water morphed from lifeblood to forbidden luxury, hawked in shady deals. Urban networks? Utterly wrecked. Taps gurgle silence, no flow, and when they do, it's an affront, sludge posing as life. Eyewitnesses describe it vividly: murky muck or sickly yellow, stench like rot, viscous texture clinging to skin, polluted with deadly heavy metals. Imagine sipping poison, metallic bitterness exploding in your mouth. The irony? Russia's elite suffer most: garrisons in Donetsk, weary infantrymen in ditches, bureaucrats imported with mirage promises. Frontline leaks paint horror: troops, hygiene forsaken, battle lice infesting itching bodies, epidemic stalking camps. Thirst drives them to desperate acts, slurping coolant from tanks, its chemical fire searing dry throats. Can a superpower army admit failure, denying pure water on captive land? This logistical meltdown humiliates the emperor's troops, their strength evaporating like mirages. Moscow's absurd remedy? A sinister push for mineral water over drinkable. Experts howl, Donbass aquifers overflow with excess salts, sulfates, fuels, toxins. Russians consume a lethal cocktail, a regime's hidden weapon against its own. Is it blunder or vile plot? Visuals haunt, soldiers' parched lips cracking, leaders' smug faces cracking under pressure. The drought's vicious twist? Kremlin's own hand dug this grave, now burying theirs in thirst. Conflict brews as need clashes with pride, what poisonous secrets lurk next? Russian soldiers, forced to sip radioactive sludge, from their wrecked vehicles, sheer thirst gripping them. Is this the reality of Moscow's so-called superpower army, stumbling into disastrous failure on stolen land, trapped in a nightmare of neglect? In the heart of the crisis, the Kremlin puppets launched a desperate PR blitz, urging everyone to sip mineral water, as if it's some magical fix. But listen to this twisted plot, experts slam it hard, saying Donbass groundwater brims with killer mineral overload, loaded with sulfates, petroleum filth, and chemical poisons from hell. So, the Russian government is poisoning its own people, turning loyal citizens and troops into unwitting lab rats, swigging a toxic brew. This isn't mere blunder, it's a calculated horror show, a sinister trial on defenseless lives. Drown out the Kremlin's lies about fixing pipes, and hear the truth roaring beneath, a swamp of deep-rooted graft sucking Russia dry. Trillions of rubles meant for canals, funneled instead to fat generals in Moscow, and crooked local cronies. Proof stings like barbed wire, the scandalous bust of Timur Ivanov. Russia's deputy defense minister, caught red-handed embezzling on canal builds, exposing the soul-crushing rot. And get this shocking revelation, the brutal, tortured corpse of Isaiah Zakharov, a key contractor found lifeless, whispering that Donbass water isn't just foul, it's tainted with blood. Is Moscow burying a giant corruption scam, instead of flow from pipes? Amid this chaos, the Kremlin-installed puppet, Denis Pushilin, grins on camera for Putin, swearing everything's perfectly managed. But behind closed doors, his thugs hawk water trucks at sky-high markups, fleecing the parched masses. His flashy stunt, gripping a tanker's wheel like a hero, can't mask the unfolding disaster. Clueless Moscow fixers, airdropped without a clue about the land, make boneheaded calls, slashing expertise, and sinking Donbass deeper. Now imagine, as rebels simmer unseen, can the Kremlin's water tyranny unravel its own iron grip, or will blood and poison claim the next soul, leaving you gasping at the edge of revelation? The occupation's leaders, dropped in from Moscow without a clue about the land, are worsening the drought disaster with their clueless choices. Did you know the Kremlin's water victory from the River Don ended in total disaster? Revealing a twisted irony, their own army drinks poison they unleashed on others. Imagine Vladimirov's pipes, celebrated as a triumph, but lacking flow. Poor quality metal, weak pumps. Barely feeding millions and troops. Putin confessed the failure himself. Disaster looms. People in Donetsk can't wash away waste. They stuff plastic bags with filth, hurl them from windows. Feel the stench, the sticky mess. Hear the thud of bags hitting streets. A city that was sleek now stinks like old decay. Russians, promised safety, live in this nightmare. Yet, amid this thirst, troops used Ukrainian water lifelines as weapons since 2022. It boomeranged. Shocking revelation, not just in Donbass, their scorched water plan hit Ukraine-wide. Blown dams like Kakhovka, Karlivka, Oskol. But it wrecked Donbass's hidden water balance, poisoning Russian lives here too. Now, in the hole they dug, they choke. Russian tactics scorched the earth with water denial. Now, their own fighters, waving victory flags, parch and perish. This drought shifts to a mind game, sparking terror and whispers. Occupiers blame locals for no water. Classic tyrant move, can't fix it? Invent an enemy. Can you picture it? Homes raided, cop squads hunting water thieves. They tear down DIY hoses, barrels, rain catchers folk built to survive. Illegal, they say. Forcing citizens to pay for regime rot with fines. But wait, unexpected twist, even pro-Kremlin folks mutter rebellion. Social buzz screams, murky slime, no drops for weeks, secret cholera. Not spy talk, loyal voices cry out. Health horror ramps up. No water means no clean. Cholera, dysentery crawl streets of Donetsk, Luhansk. Hospitals can't scrub. Secret infection spikes hit troops hard. Soldiers dodge bullets but not bugs. Their fight weakens. And the Kremlin's water theft racks up billions in bribes. Arrests expose grand theft, like Deputy Minister Timur Ivanov, nabbed for canal graft. Grimmer still, contractor Isaiah Zakharov's tortured corpse. Bloody water? Hiding the scam. Meanwhile, local boss Denis Pushilin lies to Putin on cam, all good. Behind scenes, he hawks tankers for fortunes. His PR stunt, driving one, fools none. That red flag they raised? Now it shadows thirst. Special teams with quotas march. Dismantling survival tricks. Criminalizing desperation. Rhetorical question, is this rule or ruin? Smell the sour fear in air. Touch the gritty dirt on skin. Hushed voices blame. But quiet shouts grow loud. Anger overflows channels. Sensory overload, scratching lice, parched lips cracking. Cliffhanger, will this drought topple the Kremlin's grip, or swallow more souls? Unexpected fact, their weapon backfires everywhere, drying up allies. In the shadow of chaos, the authorities are executing sweeping raids on homes, claiming they're hunting water thieves. Imagine a government invading your sanctuary, dismantling makeshift hoses, backup tanks, even rainwater collectors, all in the name of order. These simple acts of survival become crimes in a land unraveling at the seams. Heavy fines and threats are the new weapons used to punish those desperate enough to find water elsewhere. This oppressive tactic isn't just about control, it's a calculated move in a game of psychological dominance. Water, once a basic right, now fuels loyalty. Favoritism grants access to what's left, water for allies, nothing for dissenters. Yet, beneath this control, a silent rebellion stirs. Rumors ripple through social channels, revealing a mounting anger. Ordinary citizens, who once trusted their leaders, now scream that mud is all they get, weeks without a single drop. They whisper of cholera outbreaks hidden from the world, while their towns turn into preventable death traps. Imagine the stench of stagnant water mixing with dust, the taste of toxic liquids on parched tongues. The streets of Donetsk and Luhansk are turning into modern-day plague zones. Hospitals, starved of water, struggle to sterilize. Disease spreads unchecked, dysentery, cholera, diseases that once belonged to centuries past. Infection rates soar, but authorities keep these horrors secret, burying the truth like rotting corpses hidden underground. The consequence? An army's strength dissolving from within. Soldiers, supposed to be invincible, are battling microscopic enemies, bacteria and viruses, more deadly than bullets. Their bodies weaken, their resolve crumbles. A soldier's biggest threat isn't the enemy across the line, but the invisible killers lurking in contaminated water supplies. The health crisis is no longer outside, it's inside them, corrupting from the inside out. In this grim theater, the Kremlin's strategy backfires. Attempts to weaponize water, blowing up dams, sabotaging infrastructure, have turned into a boomerang. Their scorched earth tactics have poisoned their own soldiers and civilians, transforming what should be a weapon of war into a battlefield of bacteria and despair. The very foundation of their conquest crumbles beneath their feet, revealing a horror far worse than defeat, an invisible, unstoppable enemy that devours from within. In the scorching streets of Donetsk and Luhansk, hygiene has completely crumbled. Medieval diseases like cholera and dysentery rage unchecked. Hospitals can't sterilize equipment. No water flows. Infection rates surge to levels the Russian authorities bury as state secrets. Can you grasp the horror of nuclear contamination blending with this chaos? Radioactive dust swirls in the parched air, infiltrating every breath and tainting the flesh. Feel the gritty texture on your skin, like invisible sandpaper eroding hope. The stench of decay, rotting refuse piled in alleys, assails your nose, a foul symphony of despair. Russian soldiers, once towering symbols of might, now huddle in lice-infested bunkers. Their thirst drives them to desperate acts. Imagine gulping murky radiator fluid instead of pure water. How does a so-called superpower fail its protectors so miserably? Epidemics sweep through Russian ranks. They cripple the army's fight. Bullets you can dodge. Bacteria in poisoned water? Unscalable foes. Russia's invincible troops flounder against tiny invaders. This turmoil scars more than bodies. Invisible foes shatter morale. The ecological ruin? A ticking bomb of poisoned earth. Unchecked mining floods groundwater with toxins. Chemicals poison the veins of the land. Methane gas bubbles up, a silent hiss of doom. Touch the slimy leaves dripping with makeshift dew. People wring water from foliage in this 21st century nightmare. Twist plastic bags around branches. Sweat out wretched drops. In Europe's heart, once a thriving hub, humans revert to foraging beasts. Russia's vaunted civilization promises? A lie drenched in agony. Ecological carnage festers as an environmental Armageddon. Contaminated wells leak doom. No reversal possible. Colonial greed laces water with toxic sludge. Feel the acrid burn on your tongue, that metallic tang of betrayal. Root-deep pollution turns the region into a wasteland. Dread swells, like a storm cresting the horizon. Russia's own lured citizens endure hell. They chased a propagandist's paradise. Now, flinty-eyed and feverish, they claw for exits. Trapped in a vice of disease and raids. Mariupol's ex-mayor warns, escape or perish. Left behind, furious souls, simmering in rage. Desperation festers. Police crackdowns fuel rebellion. Putin radicalizes his allies with dehydration. A strategic blunder unfolds. Beyond battles, erosion threatens Russia's hold. Not a glitch. A humanitarian abyss, geopolitical and ecological. Moscow's gambit, fold Donbass into the empire. But no water means no industry. Steel mills screech to silence. Agriculture wilts. Paradise crumbles. What monstrous legacy awaits when rivers run dry and rebellion stirs beneath the surface? In the heart of Donbass, a parched nightmare unfolds, where water, a basic lifeline, has vanished like a thief in the night. Russia's bold plan to fuse this region's economy with its own empire crumbles without it. Factories lie silent, steel furnaces grow cold, and fields turn to dust, choking both geopolitics and ecology in a stranglehold. But hold on, what if the real enemy lurks not on the battlefield, but in the shadows of Moscow's own greed? Picture this: abominable reports surface of fields left barren, equipment rusting under relentless sun, and crops wilting with a sickening crunch. The stench of decay fills the air, as if the land itself screams in agony. Is the Kremlin slamming the door on its own industrial dreams, turning Donbass into a worthless wasteland that drains treasury coffers endlessly? Moscow dreamed of safeguarding Donbass's mighty industries under its wing. Oh, how that vision twists into horror because of the thirst they've unleashed. Now, grasp this toxic irony: the very region they claimed as a prize morphs into a ghost town of pollution, a drain requiring endless aid from afar. Experts warn that the sands of time reveal something far more sinister than mere drought, echoes of a Chernobyl-like nightmare, with Soviet-era explosions burying radioactive horrors deep in the earth. Imagine the horror: uncontrolled water shifts flooding abandoned shafts, stirring deadly isotopes into the groundwater. By 2026, as scientist Pavel Ishinsky foretells, this poisoned flow will seep everywhere. Could Donbass's liquid curse turn lethally radioactive? Spreading a silent bomb toward Russia's own soil, the Rostov frontier? Putin aims to shatter Ukraine, yet he's ignited a filthy catastrophe that poisons his borders like a creeping plague. For Ukrainians trapped in occupied lands, the nightmare burns brighter. Held captive by Moscow's cruel game, they face a cruel choice: bend or perish. Water, once free, now serves as a brutal tool of domination, forcing submission amid poisoned sips. Feel the chill of hunger as supplies dwindle, hear the desperate coughs from stifled factories. Does this barbarism not inflame global outrage, violating the 1949 Geneva Conventions that demand occupying powers sustain life for civilians? Russia shirks this duty, blasting pipes and leaving toxins to choke innocents, clear acts of warfare, crimes that mock even their Crimean water boasts, now shattered husks. As the assault deepens, could Putin's victory unravel into self-destruction? Ponder this chilling what-if: Russia's army drinks defeat from its own vessels, while the home front rots under lies and blame. But wait, the twisted tide turns, whispers of rebellion stir among the drained, pointing a finger back at the architects of torment. Will the occupiers drown in the despair they brood, or awaken to a rebellion brewed in bloodied dust? Stay tuned, for the poison spreads unchecked. Today, the region of Donbass faces a crisis more devastating than any battlefield conflict. For years, Russia accused Ukraine of orchestrating a water genocide. Now, the tables have turned. Russia itself is guilty of an even darker crime: actual water genocide. Imagine a land once brimming with industry, wealth, and life, now transformed into a barren wasteland. The so-called superpower has failed to deliver clean water to the people it occupies. Propaganda floods the airwaves, promising miraculous solutions like tunnels and rain-making plains. Yet, behind this spectacle lies a crumbling system incapable of fulfilling its most basic duty. Even figures like Elon Musk proposed ambitious plans for water supply, but the brutal truth remains: Russia lacks the capacity, technology, and will to manage this crisis. If a nation claiming ultimate strength cannot lay simple pipelines over 100 kilometers, what does that say about its power? Donbass stands as proof. The once mighty Russian state is struggling with basic civil needs. The poisoned waters flowing from taps are not just contaminated, they symbolize the decline of a crumbling empire. No water means no hygiene, no health, no hope. Epidemics, radioactive dust, and filth spread unchecked. The crisis goes beyond infrastructure, it exposes the rot within. Russia's ability to govern has evaporated, replaced by chaos and tyranny. Without water, the country is no longer a state, only a toxic desert of corruption and neglect. Shocking as it is, the disaster unfolding is a silent battle of the regime itself. Every drop of muddy, foul liquid swallowing Donbass is a reflection of the regime's deadly self-destruction. This crisis is not natural, it is a man-made nightmare driven by systemic corruption. The brutal reality is that the Kremlin's promises are nothing but lies. Millions suffer while the regime lines its pockets. The once proud pipelines are broken, and the water that remains is a toxic sludge, bitterness and death in every sip. Now, the human toll is heartbreaking. Children, soldiers, civilians, all fighting not only Ukrainian forces but the poison crafted by their own rulers. Soldiers become sick, epidemics surge, and hospitals grind to a halt because there's no water for sterilization or treatment. The stench of decay fills the air, overpowering the faint hope that once existed. How did a superpower fall so far? How did a nation lose its ability to serve its own people? The answer lies in greed, corruption, and reckless indifference. As desperation spreads, the Kremlin's narrative cracks. Instead of fixing what they've destroyed, they criminalize the very acts of survival, raiding homes, outlawing makeshift water collection, criminalizing hope itself. Citizens are left to barter for poisoned water on the black market, filling plastic bags with mud and calling it life. Resistance grows in whispers and smoldering anger. The more the regime tries to silence dissent, the louder the voices become, crying out from the shadows, voices of betrayal, suffering, and rebellion. This creeping chaos threatens to ignite a storm that cannot be contained. Donbass's water is not just a resource, it's a weapon of control. Yet, it's turning into a tool of uprising. The regime's lies collapse under the weight of the reality: rivers are dried, wells are poisoned, and the government's false promises are exposed. The truth is glaring: Russia's empire is not invincible, it's fragile, broken, and dying in a desert of its own making. What's next for this battered landscape? Will the ashes of this toxic empire ignite rebellion? Or will they drown in their own deceptions? The questions echo in the silent wasteland, the last waterless frontier of a fallen superpower. The storm approaches, not with water, but with an inevitable reckoning that could drown everything in flames. In the throes of this devastating drought, Russian soldiers are succumbing not just to enemy fire, but to the merciless grip of a water famine spawned by their own government's failures. Ancient empires have crumbled under the weight of parched lands, echoing through history like the crash of collapsing thrones. Donbass's withered waterways and contaminated springs now mark the tomb of Putin's grand propaganda mirage. Faucets have gone silent, endurance has shattered, and a fierce tempest brews on the horizon, threatening not salvation through rain, but apocalypse in flames. Picture this stark reality, a sprawling 53,000 square kilometer wasteland gripped by a famine for that most vital elixir, engineered not by nature's whim but by deliberate Kremlin sabotage that spiraled out of control, plunging nearly 3